Hey guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. It's kind of the first time I'm doing a YouTube video like this. I wanted to create another TikTok video, but unfortunately did not have the time to actually buckle down and talk about this issue. Normally I take clips from other videos I found on YouTube or elsewhere, or stories from elsewhere, and try to splice them together and trying to get, something said within 1 minute, which is kind of hard to do sometimes. And today I wanted to do something a little bit different, which is why I need to do it on YouTube. I want to go through the common arguments against men's rights activists and fathers' rights activists, what they're facing currently in the current political climate. And I came across a clip from a Canadian news organization where they had a panel discussion, 3 people. 2 were against men's rights activists, and 1 who was kind of neutral and did defend pretty decently the right for men's rights activists to exist on college campuses. And basically this news story was talking about how men's rights activists are being continually denied not only being able to speak on campus, but to get formal recognition like other groups like them, like women's groups, LGBT groups, and those things. That all those things get formal recognition from universities. However, men's rights groups are continually denied this recognition, and so they got a panel discussion about it, and the arguments against it were pretty bad, and I want to go through those arguments now. So here's a clip from it. I'll try to actually jump in where I need to, and we'll talk about it.
Time for our Sunday talk. So last week we had a spirited debate about women in cabinet. Tonight we tackle men's rights. A study out this week shows the rate of suicide is way up among men in their 50s, years when in the past that group was typically happier. And it's not just men of this age who are struggling. There's a move on university campuses to support younger men too, but it's controversial. Here's why.
If we have to set this up to learn what Black history, well, power to us, we have to.
For years, those who face challenges have come together on campus.
Form clubs and organizations based on self-expression and gender expression.
The University of Toronto is a feminist community.
But last week, Ryerson University's student union turned down an application for a men's issues awareness society. And it's not just Ryerson. There have been protests at the U of T.
We're here to shut down an event that is promoting the patriarchy.
At the University of Ottawa.
Hey, MRA, we don't care what chocolate.
And Queens.
Are you so frightened of hearing an opinion different from your own?
Men's rights groups say men need support too. In family law, where fathers get sole custody in only 7% of cases. And in education, where many boys are falling behind early on in school. The men's movement used to be more about support and self-esteem.
I'll never be understood. I don't feel listened to. It feels futile. What we want to accomplish here is a different feeling.
But their tactics are changing. A men's rights group in Edmonton took a campaign on sexual assault awareness and turned it into what many women saw as a nasty bit of victim blaming.
There is a double standard of holding men collectively responsible for the actions of a small subset of men.
I'm joined now by our panelists. Sachi Cole is a senior writer at BuzzFeed Canada. Jonathan Kay is editor-in-chief at Walrus Magazine, and a familiar face, former CBC panelist, lawyer Adam Goldenberg is with us tonight. Welcome back, Adam.
Thank you, Wendy.
So you're also here as a student, because I think you were a student like for 25 years?
Yeah, right. Finally finished.
So I'll come to you in just a moment, but I'm going to start with John. I'm going to start with the guys tonight on the guys' issues. What do you think about this on-campus men's groups? Should they be allowed? Should they be encouraged?
Well, look, I think the left has largely won the culture war on campuses. Now it's just a question of whether the right can have some sort of dignified fighting retreat and I think the men's rights movement is part of that. I think obviously all groups should have freedom of speech on campus. I don't think men should be treated any differently than women or any other group.
What do you think, Adam?
So I don't think it's actually a free speech issue. No one is saying that these groups shouldn't be allowed to exist. The issue is whether they should get formal recognition from student governments or funding from student governments, and that's a different proposition. Because of course they should be allowed to exist. People are allowed to have opinions that we might disagree with. My view is that you don't want to feed these trolls by shutting them down, by attacking them, because that's exactly the kind of attention that they want. I don't even...
Notice he called us trolls. This is a very dismissive attitude toward this whole thing. The very first thing that the moderator or the person leading this discussion was talking about was the rise of male suicide, especially for men who are over the age of 50, which historically has not been the case, where men over 50 were generally happier than their younger selves. So to say that we're trolls when we're bringing up very serious mental health issues, suicide issues, fathers' rights issues, is so damn demeaning. And you can see how you can see how our society is completely gynocentric in the sense that they don't care about men's issues. That we're trolls, that we cannot possibly have these huge problems that we're trying to talk about, and they honestly try to do whatever they can to suppress that knowledge, and it's disgusting.
Wait a second, so they're trolls?
Yeah,
how have they become so I'm a troll?
Well, I don't know if these are your views or not.
Well, it's a men's issues group. How does that make them a troll?
Because it's not actually about men's issues, and we'll come to this, I'm sure, but I think...
Good. I'm glad this guy who doesn't agree with men's rights issues telling us what it's really about.
What oftentimes these groups care about is exposing the culture of progressive thinking that doesn't tolerate conservatism on campuses. They have a point to prove.
How is that a bad thing?
Well, because it's not the point that the group claims to purport
to represent. Part of men's issues is the fighting the culture war. If you're saying one side of the fight, culture war gets to fight, the other side doesn't because it's a view you don't agree with?
There's a lot of conservative groups that aren't men's rights activists that are actively trying to stop the liberal bias that is inherent in universities. Ben Shapiro just did talk to Congress about it. There's laws going forth because they are actively oppressing not men's rights groups per se, but generally conservative ideas. And men's rights activists obviously kind of fall more toward the more conservative bent because feminism is looked down upon in men's rights activists and fathers' rights activists because they're the ones trying to stop family law reform. They're completely making sure that society is completely gynocentric and all these things, that men are trying to open the door and let people notice that this kind of stuff is going on. So to say that this is just for attention to try to stop liberal bias in the universities is nothing short of a falsehood.
No, I mean, and again...
No, but they're a troll because of that?
No, I think what they are out for is attention. I think they want to make a point about the campus environment, and I don't want them to make that point.
Lots of groups are seeking attention. Why is that a bad thing?
Well, I think that there's a difference between seeking attention for the sake of seeking attention and seeking attention because you have a point of view that actually matters.
How do you know
I got to bring Sachi in here, and then we'll open this up again. What do you think about these groups on campus? I mean, part of the reason for them being turned down at Ryerson was that they would make women nervous.
Yeah, it would make me nervous. If I'm a woman that goes to a university and there's a men's rights group that's right next door, of course that would make me nervous.
So should men be nervous that there's a feminist group? Should men be nervous about that? No, we shouldn't, right? In your eyes, men shouldn't be nervous that there's a feminist group within college, but somehow women need to be offended and scared that there are men who want to point attention to men's issues. Somehow that's an affront to women.
I do agree that obviously they're trying to get attention and they want to be, I guess, validated or invalidated, and then they get to feed off of that. But I don't think that they should exist.
But why would it make you afraid?
Because I think a lot of the men's rights movement is actually a response to anxiety about women doing better.
This is the same old argument that feminists will always bring up. So when men bring up legitimate issues where men are suffering, where boys are falling behind in education, men are committing suicide, they'll just say, you're only bringing up these issues because you don't want women to succeed in life. That that the power balance is starting to get so close to equality, because they're saying that they're still not equal yet. You know, so they're saying that it's getting so close to equality now, men are starting to freak out and start complaining about the tiniest little things. But these issues aren't tiny. Again, we're talking about male suicide. We're talking about family law reform. We're talking about fathers who want to be in their children's lives who are being systematically taken out by vindictive mothers and by corrupt courts, family courts. And these are serious issues, and it's affecting our children, and it's having deep, almost uncorrectable, at this point, effect in our society. The worst aspects of our society is usually from people who grow up with single mothers. And in fact, I would argue that the worst thing to do to a child is force them to be raised by a single mother. The stats just show that it's not a good thing for the kids, and then they end up growing up more likely to be in jail, more likely to commit suicide, more likely to be on drugs, to be incarcerated, and a lot of other things like dropping out of school. These things aren't good for society. They're not good for boys. They're not good for women. It's not good for society. So please, it's not because we're paranoid that women are doing better. It's that men are starting to fall behind because of the gynocentric nature of society now.
And you see this with men's rights groups and men's rights activists who claim that women falsify rape claims all the time, which is not remotely true.
It's not just rape claims, it's domestic abuse claims, which is probably the number one area where false accusations are probably most likely the highest. And it's not just false rape claims. Anytime there's a family family court dispute with custody and divorce, there's almost a PFA involved, almost every single time, because it's a strategy amongst women to get a PFA, and it's very, very easy for a woman to get a PFA against anybody she so deems. In most places, all you need to convince a judge of is that you're scared. You don't have to show any proof that any violence has ever occurred. All you have to say is, I'm scared he might hurt me, and you will get granted a PFA. So, and when a PFA becomes activated, now you can't talk to your ex-spouse or ex-girlfriend, even if you have a kid with her. She goes into custody court and says, I have a PFA against him. He could be violent. He's threatened me. Or she can come up with any accusation she wants. And because of the PFA, you cannot properly co-parent that child. So the judge will say, well, it's in the child's best interest to be with the mother because of this PFA. It's almost going to be impossible for these two to co-parent. Therefore, I'm just going to grant custody to the mother. I know a couple females who infiltrated groups on Facebook, mothers groups, just to see what they were saying. And sometimes young women will come in and ask for advice because they want to get a divorce. And almost every time, an older woman will advise the younger woman who's seeking a divorce to file a PFA for leverage. They're honestly telling them to falsify abuse or the threat of abuse in order to get an upper hand in custody and divorce. So these things are not unlikely to happen. They're very likely to happen, and women know that women basically have a loaded gun that they are able to use at any time. Some of them won't use it at all, but it's always there. And sometimes all they have to do is threaten to use it. And that loaded gun is these false abuse accusations. And they do happen, and I believe they happen way more often than, the FBI says 10% are proven false. And I would think it's probably at least double that, if not more. I'm leaning more toward 40% of these domestic abuse accusations are completely fabricated to win custody of children. In fact, it happens so often, it's called the silver bullet. You just type in silver bullet custody cases, and all these articles come up about this very thing. And it is a thing that we need to talk about as men, because it can happen because of custody. It could just happen because your girlfriend's vindictive.
And it's a direct response to women speaking up and having a voice and talking. And you see that with posters that say, don't be that guy, and they've changed it to don't be that girl. And now, again, the onus is on women.
I'm hearing a lot of projection here, saying, what your group really wants is this bad thing. When I pass a feminist group or a group of trans activists, I don't say, what you really want is some negative thing I'm projecting on you. Let them organize. Let them be like any other group, and let them have their say, and then we can decide whether
but
what
their
they say
has been bad.
Bad. Look, by the way, when I was younger, way back in the 1990s, there was genuine concern about safety on campus, especially for women. I went to McGill, and there was a lot of violence in the McGill ghetto, which is where a lot of students lived. And people organized. There was walk safe programs because it was a safety issue. People were actually being battered and, in some cases, assaulted.
I think that's different now.
Yeah, it's not any different.
So, of course, that's something that's needed. But what's happened is we've dilated the definition of the word safety. So now safety isn't just about protecting people from being hit or raped. Safety is about protecting people from ideological viewpoints that they find objectionable. And that is a perversion of the word safety.
Safety is feeling like you can go out to a party at your university campus, and if, God forbid, something terrible happens, you're not going to be disbelieved the next morning.
Okay, let's dispel this myth right now. You hear it all the time. Women always say, because I'm a girl, I have to be afraid to go down the street at night. And men don't have that problem. Okay, let's look at statistics. Statistically speaking, if you go on the FBI database and you search victims of violent crime by gender, you will find out that men are more likely to be victims of violent crime than women. And by far. Especially when you're talking about very violent things like murder and aggravated assault. Men are victims way more than women with these two things. Okay? So I don't want to hear about women being scared to go down a street to their car, and that men don't have to fear the same thing. When in reality, men should be more fearful because they're more likely to be victims of those things. Now, you say this, and they go and look that up and realize that you're telling the truth. They might say, well, women are still sexually assaulted and raped more than men. Not when you include prison population. You include the prison population, men are raped still far more often than women. So, again, men are more likely to be victims of violent crime, and if you're falsely accused of domestic abuse and you go to jail, you're more likely to get raped in jail than your girlfriend that falsely accused you of domestic abuse.
Trolls, apparently. Trolls online because who have views you don't like.
No, again,
that's also
that's
safe.
not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is these groups want attention for the sake of having attention.
How do you know what they want? Are you a
Well,
member
they're
of this
telling
group?
you.
They're saying we want to raise these issues, and you're saying that's a bad. That's the word you used. Oh, that's
so,
a bad issue.
This
so I
is
don't
the
hear
list of what they say
Sure.
are their issues. This is the Canadian Association for Equality, and their guidelines are followed by a lot of these campus groups. Boys. Crises issues like education, bullying, suicide, which we've seen is up among older men. Men's health issues, family law, custody is an issue, probably not when you're 20, but later. Legal biases against men and social media misandry and hatred.
But Wendy, as we know, they're just trying to get attention for these issues, which is a bad thing. And by the way, on campus, it is completely true that for decades.
Now listen to this. Listen to this sow freaking laugh at these issues. Like, if a guy laughed like that in that condescending, dismissive tone about anything concerning women issues, he would be canceled. he wouldn't be able to get a job anywhere. He'd be, if he was on this panel and did that, he would be ostracized, criticized. He would be getting death threats, anything. It is absolutely disgusting that this woman is laughing at those issues that are affecting men and boys, and just to have a dismissive, laughing attitude like some damn joke.
But Wendy, as we know, they're just trying to get attention for these issues, which is a bad thing. And by the way, on campus, it is completely true that for decades, we did not take the problem of sexual assault seriously. That is absolutely true. Now, what you do sometimes see is you have a due process problem. You see this in the United States. There's 50 cases going through the courts in the United States where men have gone to the courts because they couldn't get what they consider to be due process on campus.
I think at this point he's just trying to throw them a bone to get his point across, because I disagree with that. I think sexual assault has always been a bad thing, and even men would say it's a bad thing because men tend to want to protect women, which I know we're not allowed to do anymore because that's sexist now, but historically men enjoyed protecting women, and that included being protected from rapists.
They're saying
but that's not actually
this is
what
a
these
serious
groups are about.
Well, that is one of the issues they have explicitly raised.
Yes, but those issues, I mean, for example, the men's health issue, right? Men don't take care of themselves. There are mental health challenges that are more pronounced in men than in women. These are real issues. The issue of making sure that there's a process on campus so we don't brand people as rapists unless they've had a chance to defend themselves against those sorts of allegations. Those aren't bad things. But when you lump them in with this agenda that aims to expose some liberal bias, the same sort of people that say, oh, the mainstream media are a bunch of liberals, that is doing a disservice to these issues that I agree with John are important.
I don't understand your viewpoint. You're saying, well, this issue is good, this issue is good, this issue is good, but they have this political bias on the current state of ideology that you object to, so they don't deserve the same recognition as 100 other groups.
Of course, men's rights are going to have some type of political bias because we're pushing them to change law and to change policies to make things more equal. And these things are being laughed at on this panel. They're being dismissed as us being trolls. But these are real issues that we're trying to put forward. Yet, we don't get the recognition that other groups get that feel that they're being discriminated against.
Exactly. What is the argument that these groups are really about stopping the battle against sexual assault?
What is the argument saying?
Yeah, what's the proof of that? That's what these groups are into?
Listen, I mean, you can go online and you can have 1,000 men send you a note as a woman that they would like to kill you.
Nothing like being asked for evidence of your assumptions and then giving anecdotal evidence. Sorry, hon. Cupcake. That's not how that works.
When I go outside, I get men stop me and ask me why I'm not smiling. This is happening all over the place.
So men asking you to smile is the same as dismissing sexual assault. If you need any more evidence of the ridiculousness that feminists will go to dismiss men's rights issues, there's really nowhere else you need to go.
Obviously, there are a lot of issues that are happening with boys and with men, but I think those are issues that have way more complexity than just this issue. Like the issue of men having higher suicide rates, I think that actually speaks to how mental health is stigmatized, how men feel like they can't ask for help. I think that's actually an issue of how modern masculinity affects men negatively. But I feel like this movement in particular is a direct response to having anxiety about women having something to say.
So now, the only reason why men have severe mental health issues and their suicide rate, well, it's the fault of men. That's the fault of men. Could you imagine men saying, well, the reason why women are more depressed is because they're just too emotional. It's their fault that they're depressed. Could you imagine the backlash if men said that about women and their mental health? Of course, it's absolutely untrue when it comes to male suicide that it's a mental health issue that men don't want to talk about their problems, because that's what she's basically trying to say here, and she'll be saying that soon. But it's, look, when you, right now, at least in the US, for every 4 men who commit suicide, one woman commits suicide. So that's a 4-to-1 disparity in suicide rates. Now, if we do divorced men and women, it's 10-to-1. So why are divorced men committing more suicide than just way more suicide than the average? Why? Well, let's just think about this for a minute. Divorced men go through, obviously you've been going through a divorce, and most likely child custody. And what are the results of those things usually? Well, in a divorce, a man will lose half of his stuff. Everything that he's worked for up until that point is now mostly gone. So, and not only is half of his stuff gone, he's going to have to start paying alimony to the woman who divorced him. Because women apply for divorce at a much higher rate. It's like 75 to 80% of the divorce filed are filed by women. And we can see why, because they financially benefit from it. So we have men who lose half of their stuff and then have to pay for lawyers to go through this divorce, go through what they're going to be paying in alimony, and then they have to go through a custody battle. And all this stuff happens at the same time. So they're going through the stressful situation of a custody battle, and they're most likely going to lose if the woman is being vindictive and wants to put up a fight, because all a woman has to do is just take it all the way to a judge, and the judge 75% of the time is going to grant them sole legal custody, because that's what the stats show. So these men fighting for custody of their kids some spend up to $50 to $100 or $100,000+ just in lawyer fees to try to see their children that are being systematically taken away from them by these courts. So, and then when they lose, they're not only paying alimony to this woman, he's paying child support. Massive amounts of child support, to the point where a lot of men have to move back in with their parents or move in with friends or live in a dump. And when they have their weekend visits with their kids, they can't properly provide for them. They're literally poor. A guy who could be making $80,000 a year could be living like someone who only makes $20,000 a year when that's all said and done, because half of his stuff is gone, all of his savings is gone, and he's probably racked up a crap load of debt because of lawyer fees and trying to provide for himself during these hectic situations. He may lose his job because he was under so much stress. He might be, if it goes down a real dark path where a woman falsely accuses you of domestic abuse, you might even be arrested. You might be going through a criminal trial during all this. And so things start being, your financial future is completely taken from you. And if it goes down that dark path where you get a PFA or she files criminal charges on you for something you never did, they'll take your kids away from you. So some of these divorced men have their financial future taken away from them. They have their kids taken away from them, and their future taken away from them. They have no real future. If they're living in poverty, how are they ever going to, just start life over and I'll just get another wife and have more kids with that? There is no future for that man. So when you take everything away from him, no amount of counseling, no amount of drugs is going to take that feeling away, because it's reality. And a lot of these men get so poor that they can't pay the child support, and they end up having to go back to jail because they can't afford child support. These men become so poor they can't pay their child support, so they end up going to jail. And so it's absolutely disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting what we do to men, what the family courts do to men. And here we have two panelists saying that it's not a thing that really needs to be talked about. We're just trolls.
I think it's fair to say that there's something oppositional here. This is to answer John's question. It's not just about saying that men need more attention paid to their mental health issues, or men need more attention paid to the challenges that boys have in our education system. It's the fact that women are the problem, that women's equality is an issue, and that directing these men's issues as some kind of response, as women cannot gain because then men lose. Yeah. That's what I think is intellectually disingenuous.
Are you telling me that a campus group has been created that's oppositional in nature? That students are oppositional in nature, that they're actually being militant and feisty, and that they're going against established ideologies? That's a scandal. Because when I went to school, all of the groups conformed entirely to the dominant ideology. Okay. So I think you've identified a real scandal here. That
now you're making a straw man argument. I'm not saying that these
because
groups should
everything you've said is ridiculous.
No, because the very first thing I said,
that an oppositional group should be banned is just an entirely ridiculous thing to say.
But the very first, no, John, the very first thing I said was that these groups should not be banned. You've precisely
actually
what I said.
But you said they should not be recognized by student societies, which means they don't get funding and they cannot have events on campus.
So they have a right to funding.
No, but you're saying that they should effectively be
ostracized. To let any group that forms get whatever money they want from a student.
You're not going to let a hate group in. This is a legitimate
here.
policy issue, and you're saying, no, don't let them have events on campus. Don't let them have funding.
So you should get to decide what the Ryerson student government funds.
I'm saying they should be treated fair play, and you're saying they don't get fair play.
Okay, now this guy is completely on point. It's exactly the problem. Yeah, men's rights are going to be hostile to feminist ideology because we see it exactly what it is. It's not what the media portrays it as. It's not an equality movement at all, and it has infiltrated every aspect of our current society. Education, media, everything. Even your very conservative, Trump-supporting, rah-rah females have been indoctrinated with it. And so, yes, there's going to be things that we're going to say, yes, this problem was created by gynocentrism, which is spread by feminist thought, and it's wrong, and we need to self-correct it, because not only is this bad for men, it's going to be bad for women, and we have seen how bad it is for women, because these women are putting off families and completely career-focused, and then once they turn 30 and 32 and then 35, and they have no husbands, and they're pissed that they don't have a child yet, we've created a lot of very attractive women to be completely childless by the age 40 because they bought into the feminist lie. And that hurts women and therefore hurts society.
I think one of the other things that frustrates me about the men's rights movement is that it's often a lot of straight white men talking to other straight white men about the issues that straight white men are having.
Let's ban that.
Let me get the thought out.
Thing. Okay.
And I think it ignores a lot of other issues that are actually totally valid within what's going on with men. I mean, like, for example, like, they don't talk about how racialized men have different experiences than white men. They don't talk about trans men. They're not talking about queer men at all.
That's because straight white men, minus the white part, are the ones being affected by this. Black men, you want to talk about black men and what they have to suffer through. Let's talk about that. Black men are the ones who hurt the worst by not having family law reform, because these black men tend not to have the resources to fight, to go through a court battle, to hire a lawyer. And there are very, very little, if not no, legal help, free legal help that men can get when it comes to these civil issues, because yeah, you might have a right to a lawyer in criminal trial, but that might not necessarily be the case in a civil case, especially when talking about family court issues. So these black men don't have the resources normally to get a lawyer, to be able to fight even pro se on their own behalf. And unfortunately, in the African American community, there are a lot more children born out of wedlock. And again, there's a stereotype in the family courts that if you're not married to the woman you have a child with, you are going to be looked down upon by the judge and you will most likely never get 50-50 custody. Unless, of course, you're talking about you've been in a very long-term relationship, lived together for years, you basically have a common law marriage. And other than that, you're going to be looked down upon for not being married, and she's going to get default custody because she's the mother, just simply because she has the vagina. That's it. So black men are affected by not having family law reform because they are very, very likely to lose their children. And in the African American community, 80% of children in the African American community are raised by single parent homes. And we know that's mostly single mother homes. So yeah, this issue, specifically the father's rights issue, does affect black men, and these other issues affect black men. And we're certainly not going to talk about trans men, women who want to be men. Get the hell out of here with that kind of stuff. They aren't men. They definitely have their own problems in the trans community. They can talk about those issues there. But women who become men or try to become men do not have the issues of family law reform that needs to be done or be looked at. It is completely different. That's why we don't talk about them. It's like asking the American Heart Association why it hates people with diabetes because they're not trying to fix diabetes. They're fixating on their own issues. That's why.
They're talking about the most privileged class of men that there is.
Hey, we need our own group too, okay?
I know, you're long suffering.
So you don't see any of this?
That effing eye roll. Oh, she's a peach. Who wants to marry up? Who wants to marry that? White men aren't privileged. I'm sorry, but we're the most hated group by everybody else. And pretty much any other group, we're usually the most hated. White Christian men are like the most hated. And again, men in general are falling behind, and women have the distinct advantages in every aspect of life. Literally every aspect of life, they have an advantage over men. But yet, we're considered privileged.
John, as being a backlash, like a nasty backlash against women
Actually, on
getting
this,
ahead?
I'm going to agree with the other panelists. There obviously is an element of backlash. There's a culture war out there, and there are people who feel tribalistic on both sides. They say, it's feminism versus the opposite of feminism. It's men versus women. Obviously, and especially.
What's the opposite of feminism?
Well, I was trying to figure out masculinism. It doesn't sound. It doesn't sound.
So here we go. So to them, feminism is propped up to be this savior of women, the object of all good and holy and everything. And the opposite of that has to be misogyny, the most disgraceful, evil thing ever. And that's exactly one of the biggest problems with feminists is if you just listen to the language that they use and why they view women better than men, because they do. Don't feed the lie that feminists are here for equality, because they're not. They hate men. They always have, and they do whatever they can to oppose men and belittle men and to step on them for their own gain. And so just look at the way that they use language. So like I said earlier, to them, patriarchy, named after men, is evil. It's what has made. It's the Satan. It's the devil of the feminist worldview. It's the arbiter of all things of injustice and hatred and bigotry and all that. It's patriarchy. And they name that after men, or really the Greek word is for father. So father and men, that's what they name the most evil thing in the world, is patriarchy to feminism. But what is the arbiter of all things that are good? Feminism. And they name that after them. So that's why they think this whole thing is funny, that because of feminism, of being the object of everything good, well, then therefore the opposite therefore has to be bad. So that's why they're laughing, and that's why they just don't get what he's trying to say.
Masculinism doesn't sound right. The point is, obviously, when you're a student, it's a time when you're oppositional. You pick sides, you're tribalistic about your ideology, and a lot of these groups are expressions of that. It's not a bad thing, it's part of campus life.
I think there's a difference between having your viewpoint heard and demanding that others listen to you as a matter of right. That's where I disagree with John.
Got to wrap up in 30 seconds, but Sachi, 20 years ago it was women's rights, hear me roar. Now men's groups are trying to... Where is this going?
I don't know. I'm so sad about it.
By the way,
It's so sad that men have issues and they don't want to listen to me anymore. I am... This woman, please, whoever she is, if you know who this woman is, my God, help this woman out. She is freaking insane. That she is so sad that men are starting to talk about the issues that feminism definitely started to create for us. And she doesn't want to take responsibility for it whatsoever. And she just laughs about it. It's a big joke to her. It's funny. It's hilarious. It's really sad that she thinks that way.
My side is losing the culture war. We just want to go out with a little bit of dignity.
You're not losing the culture war.
We all know
you're
I'm losing
not.
the culture war.
No, you were still part of the most privileged class in North America. I don't know where you're getting that you're losing. You're losing anything.
Look at who sits on corporate boards. Look who dominates the professions
in
our
every
politics.
industry. You're here. You're sitting here.
I feel so empowered right now.
I know you do.
Thank you.
Well,
Seth.
everybody's happy once again. Thank you very much. I don't know if I learned anything, but it was fascinating. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Nice to
Wendy.
see you again, Adam.
Thank you.
And Sachi. And John, of course.
Overall, that the guy who seemed to defend men's rights activists did okay. But the problem is they didn't bring on an actual men's rights activist to this panel. How comes? Why not? I don't know. I don't know why they refused to do that. I'm going to put a link to the full video on there if you guys want to watch the full video. And read the comments. There's a woman named Karen Strawn there was a clip of her in this news story talking about men's rights. And they have talked to this woman before, yet didn't even ask for her to be on. She's Canadian even, so I don't understand why they didn't invite her on to talk about this very issue. She's very elegant in how she says things. So I think she would have destroyed these two much more so than the other guy did. You know, here we are, feminists don't want to talk about men's rights. They laugh at us. They're dismissive. And it's funny that they say the reason why we have mental health issues is because we don't talk about it. And it's funny, as soon as we start trying to group up and want to start talking about these things, who's the first people who want to shut us up? It's the feminists. So that's all I got on this. If you guys enjoyed this, you guys coming over from TikTok or from my Instagram, you enjoyed watching this, I'll do more videos like this if you guys like it. Or again, my page is going to be mostly about fathers' rights. I'm going to try to stick to that area, but I'll talk about all types of men's rights issues and anti-feminism. And so again, if you're finding me for the first time, please subscribe to this YouTube channel. I'll try putting out more videos. Like I said, I'm recording this on my phone. I'm doing really, I'm going to be editing this on really crappy editing stuff. So hopefully one day I'll have the good materials to get everything done, to get more professional type stuff going on. I just obviously don't have the money for all that stuff right now. So if you're finding me the first time, please hit subscribe. If you're following me over from TikTok, please subscribe. Follow my Instagram. I'll either be doing lives on YouTube or on Instagram. So again, all my stuff, all my social media stuff is under A Father's Crisis. So YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. Those are the three main ones I'm on. It's A_fathers_crisis. You find me on all of them. I'll link them all here. Again, Thanks, guys. Thanks for viewing, and please hit the like button.